Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha. Last year, an STLPR investigation into Missouri's Child Welfare Division discovered an alarming situation: a massive backlog of cases involving thousands of allegations of abuse and neglect owing to a severe staffing shortage. How short? As of early August 2023, the division had just 16 investigators, dozens fewer than the roughly 60 people needed to handle the existing caseload. Challenges do remain, but there have been changes since STLPR's Jason Rosenbaum reported on that story for the Midwest Newsroom in September. Last week, Jason sat down with the Missouri Children's Division Director Darrell Missey to talk about what's been done since early fall, how the division can ensure it has the staff to investigate abuse allegations, and, when needed, to take action to get a child out of a bad situation. Here's Jason.
When we talked last year, you mentioned that there were 16 active investigators in the St. Louis region looking into claims of abuse and neglect when there should have been 60. Now, when we're talking on Valentine's Day 2024, how many investigators are currently looking into cases of abuse and neglect in St. Louis and St. Louis County?
We're getting close to the 60. They've not given me a breakdown exactly of how many people are doing investigations and how many folks are doing foster care case management, but our numbers are substantially better. At one point, we were close to 50% staffed. So I asked yesterday how many folks that we have, and we have 131 staff. 3 are in training. We have 18 vacancies, which to my simple math means we're approximately 87% staffed, which is the best it's been in a long time, and people are starting to feel it. I was just talking with our deputy director, Tiffany Moore, who was in the Page office, and she today, and she said you wouldn't believe the spirit here. It's the morale is so much better because people are walking around and talking, and actually there were people here. And this time last year, she said it seemed like a ghost town, and it's not like that now. And so I think the staffing has come up to a place where people are starting to really feel like we have folks that we need to start to really move the ball.
Do you know how many of those people are still in training? Are there people who you just mentioned who are actually going out and investigating cases?
They are going out and investigating cases, but I will tell you that there is an effort, I think a wise effort, to ease people into this, and to make sure that we don't just throw somebody immediately into the deep end of the pool, if you know what I mean. So that a brand new worker is not going to be assigned or made to do the things that a more seasoned person would do. But as you probably could well point out, if we had 16 people before, the vast majority of who we have are very new and they're coming on, and they're coming on at a reasonable clip that I think that we are really making an effort. One person gave me, somebody from Change and Innovation, who's a consultant that's helping us with the process work in St. Louis, gave me numbers from last week. Because we would just always run a deficit. We would get so many reports, and we would only be able to investigate however many of them. Well, we had 166 reports come in last week, and we closed 392 cases. So that's going in the right direction. So the trajectory is promising.
When we had talked last year, the average caseload for investigators was close to 150, which I would say is an almost apocalyptic number compared to federal standards, which should be like 12 to 15.
Right.
Do you have any sense of what the average caseload is now that there is more people on board?
It's 56.
56.
Which is still too much.
Yes.
But doesn't sound quite so apocalyptic, does it? When, talking to the Change and Innovation folks again, they were talking that if they can get that number, to 20 and under, it's a manageable thing. And so, and a lot of those cases are the back due cases still. Cases where we've gone out, we've seen the child, and we're just doing the follow up. So the strategy right now is keep up with what comes in currently and chip away at the back do work that we've already assured safety. We've gone out and looked at somebody, but we've got to do the follow-up. That's sort of the approach that's being taken. It appears to be working. Our regional director, Felicia McKenzie, has a plan. Giving folks a certain number of cases per person. All of them, including her and everybody, go out and finish up these cases. She hopes to move a couple thousand cases in the next couple of months, and that would, at that clip, we could have the whole backlog resolved by summer.
Do you know what the backlog is? And when I say backlog, it's cases that are still open after 45 days. Where
That's
is
right.
it at this point?
6,960. Now that is significantly down, and we're down from even like January 15th. It was 7,181. So we're really moving in the right direction. And understand those are cases that simply aren't finished because you've got to do follow up. So I will tell you that what has been communicated to me is that cases where there's a serious safety issue, those kids are being seen, or that's being checked to make sure that's not the case anymore. And the things that are on the back burner and have been left over are cases where we just have to do the follow-up. We have to make the second contact. We have to check, all other sources of information. So that work, and we have to do the documentation of all that, right? So that work is what is left in that backlog of work. And I am hopeful. I'm very hopeful that if we can get fully staffed, and we're getting there, and these folks are trained and will stay, that we will really be able to take care of that problem that people have been talking about for quite some time.
So 6,960 cases. Is that all open cases, or is that only cases that have been open for more than 45 days?
No, I think that's all of them.
Okay.
I'd have to confirm that for you, but I do believe that's all of them. But understand, what we're trying to do is to get to a place where, and I believe we're succeeding, where on the current cases that are coming in, we don't have them left over after a week. I mean, 45 it should be an outlier if you go past 45, trying to build a culture where that's the case. Earlier on, when we had no people, it just became hopeless, right? So last week, for example, there were, for a long time, we had every 30 days, you'd have 100 new cases come through that had existed longer than 30 days. When they looked at that number last week, okay, how many cases have we had that are older than 30? Just got to the point where they're older than 30 days. It was just 6 last week compared to 100 this time last year. So that is really moving in the right direction in a way that I think is so encouraging, because it means we're able to keep up with the current work in a way we were not able to do just 6 months ago.
Well, the reason I asked that question about the differentiation between cases that are been open more than 45 days and just cases that are open is because when we talked last year, the number was 6,124 cases that have been open for more than 45 days. So 6,124 is less than 6,960.
Right. But we continued to accumulate them. Understand? When we didn't have these people, we continued, and I don't know where it topped out. All I know is that at this point, it's going down, and the number of cases older than a week have reduced significantly, and we want to get to a place where the expectation is that we just don't get cases that are older than 45 days unless something is really problematic and that you can't find somebody or it's extraordinary.
And again, when we talked last year, it was around like August or September of 2023. So you're saying that the caseload kept going up until like January of this year, basically.
Right. And I think you can point rather directly to the pay raise as making a big difference. I think that the work that was done in the legislature to get us the funds that we needed to do that have caused us to be able to hire and retain people in a way we could not before, and it's making a substantial difference.
The governor has proposed a 3.2% increase for all state employees.
That's right.
I asked him and his chief of staff, is there going to be more for Children's Division? And basically, with some exceptions, I think that like Division of Youth Services, for example, where
Right.
they are like essentially staff that are monitoring juvenile detention facilities 24/7, they're going to get more, but it's going to be 3.2%
Right.
for child abuse investigators, which would go from about $43,000 a year to $44,188.09 a year. Do you think that's going to be enough to incentivize more people to not only work as investigators but stay as investigators?
I don't know, but what I think people need to understand is that what that communicates is that we understand the nature of the task and how hard it is, and I don't know if that would be adequate incentive or not. Most of the people who come here are doing this because they have a heart for people. They have a heart for kids and for families, and that's why they're here. Where we were this time, before the plan passed, before the governor's recommendation was accepted last year, where we were is people could not afford to stay. It was beyond just, are you incentivized to come? The issue was, could you actually afford to stay? And I think we're getting to a place where the answer to that question is yes. I think the 3% raise this year would be appreciated if the legislature passes it. And I think that long term, as we look at the amount that we compensate people, of course, we have to look at the folks who are dealing with the numbers have to look at what we have available.
We need to take a quick break, but we'll be back shortly to continue this conversation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.
Let's return to STLPR politics correspondent Jason Rosenbaum's conversation with Darrell Missey, the director of Missouri Children's Division. Last September, Jason reported on the division's severe backlog of over 6,000 abuse and neglect cases and its critical staffing shortfall. Last week, Director Darrell Missey spoke with Jason about changes in approach to staffing and to case management. Here again is Jason.
I've talked with some legislators, primarily Democratic legislators, who, yes, are in the superminority, but oftentimes they have influence to affect budgetary matters. State Representative Rachel Prouty, for example, has said that increasing the salaries for Children's Division is going to be one of the biggest priorities for her over the coming year.
If I can go down by the local Walmart and get, tuition assistance and health care and things on day one, why am I going to work at such a hard job and be overworked and overburdened for $40,000 or whatever we're starting them at? And so that's not being competitive. It's contrary to the focus or the claim of a focus of workforce development. The main workforce that the state has an interest in is its own workforce, state employees. And so that is a priority. My priority is to ensure that for these departments that are working with children, that we are making sure that people, our employees, are there to take care of them.
That is State Representative Rachel Prouty. She is a Democrat from Ferguson. Not only is she a member of the House Budget Committee, but she's also the ranking member of the House Children's and Families Committee. Do you think that not only in St. Louis, but throughout the state, if people like Representative Prouty are successful and you get more than 3.2%, that's going to help your efforts statewide to recruit and retain investigators?
There is no question that more compensation would make it easier to recruit and retain quality staff. I think there's no question about that. And I really appreciate Representative Prouty. She's been a great advocate for our people and for our kids and our families. She's consistently been messaging that in all the hearings that I have attended and everything I've ever heard. But I will tell you that in the legislature, I have found so much support for our folks there, from all across party lines, from everyone. And I think the only differences of opinion come down to what can we afford to do. I think if everyone agreed that we could afford to do what Representative Prouty just said, I think it would happen, and I think our folks would be grateful. So I encourage that conversation. I think that it would make a difference to have higher pay. It always would. We're grateful for the governor's recommendation this year of another raise, yet another in another year. And I've had people all over our agency, as I've talked to them, say, we've never seen this in our lives. I mean, the amount of raises that have happened, the amount of movement that we've had on the salaries and on the policy front, that they're all just so grateful that what has happened. We'll be grateful if the 3% happens, and I would not argue with Representative Prouty's assertion, because I think she understands where our people are, and she certainly has a point about more compensation is always going to help with recruitment and retention.
We're talking with Darrell Missey. He is the director of Missouri's Children's Division. I want to play another clip from the chairwoman of the House Children's and Families Committee, State Representative Hannah Kelly, a Republican from Mountain Grove. She doesn't disagree that Children's Division employees may need more money, but in her view, there has to be some fundamental shifts in how the agency is managed. Here's Representative Kelly talking with me earlier this year.
Not everything rises and falls on money, because if you don't have a good structure, if you don't have good leadership within the individual layer of the department, you can throw as much money there as you want, but you've got to have people that feel inspired to come to work every day. I come to work here and at home in my district because I love my people and because I love this state, right? But I also have to have another job to be able to come here and do this. I don't come to work for the money, right? And it's got to be that way within our departments. We have got to have the financial support so that they can focus on the job we're asking them to do, yes. But we have also got to have the environment that is very, very positive and supportive beyond the money.
That's State Representative Hannah Kelly. She is a Republican from Mountain Grove and the chairwoman of the House Children's and Families Committee. Now, I think just implicitly, the fact that the St. Louis branch of the Children's Division needed management consultants and had a situation where they only had 16 investigators and had this really large amount of turnover indicates that what Representative Kelly is talking about has some validity, because I don't think that any you would have had to take these drastic measures if there wasn't some systemic problems in this department or in this branch or any other branch. Is that fair to say?
I think it is. I think Representative Kelly is absolutely right. When Director Nodell and I have now been here 2 years, which is amazing how quickly that time flew, and we found people who were utterly demoralized. And offices that were really struggling just to get by. And from my first day, I have been working on the mindset, on our vision. That is she's absolutely right. We can have all the money in the world, and if we don't have that, we have a problem. And what I've sort of set out as our prime directive for all of you out there who are fans of Star Trek. What if we don't do anything else? What do we do? That is help people. Help people, and people did not feel that way. People felt like they were checking boxes and plugging holes and just doing what they could do to survive, keeping their heads above water. I believe that across the state, we have turned the corner on that. People are ready. They're ready to help people. Our prevention efforts, getting out front of these cases and being proactive, they believed that we needed to do that, and we're really moving the ball on those things. The first thing I did when I came here was listen. And I went to all 46 circuits, and I did vision surveys and asked them, what is it that you think we should do? Just handwrite it. Don't no check boxes. I'm not giving you the answers. And I'd read them all when I would go home. And what I heard consistently, of course, they wanted more people. They needed more money to be able to keep more people. But they wanted to help people. They wanted to be proactive and get in front of cases and be able to help families before they had to have a hotline, before the children had to come into custody. And then they wanted to have the time to be able to work to get those children home. And if they could not do that, to find them a home. They wanted to help. And I think that spirit is out there everywhere. If you talk to our people on the front lines across the state, that is the way they feel. And in St. Louis in particular, I think you'd find some of this in Kansas City too, that it was worse here because the volume is higher, and if you look at the cost of living, the pay is lower. Because it costs more to live here than it costs to live in Poplar Bluff. It just does. And so the rent is higher. Services cost more. There's a lot of difference. And so that's why these particular offices had struggles. And I think here there are some structural things we need to work on. One of the things that's in the governor's recommendation that we requested was that we would receive 2 circuit managers here for this region, because what happened is that St. Louis and St. Louis County were merged into a sort of super circuit
during COVID, right?
Right. I think it was in 21. They were merged into a super circuit.
And wasn't that because so many people had quit, or there had been positions eliminated, and they just needed to merge that to keep their head above water, basically?
I don't know what the rationale was, but sort of what I heard being discussed inside the office when I was there was the idea that consolidation would be good and that it would be more efficient to do that. And I disagreed with that from the first day I got there, because I came at it from a person who worked in the courts. I mean, I came at it as a judge, and what I understand, we are organized to stand in conjunction with the judicial circuits. Mm-hmm. But and when you cross that border into a different judicial circuit, at least for contracted case managers in particular, or our foster care case managers, it becomes a different place. It becomes a different job in a sense. So what we're proposing to do is to have a circuit manager for St. Louis City and a circuit manager for St. Louis County that would engage those court systems and manage the people that work there and undo that super circuit. And we think that will help too. But there's a bigger cultural piece of that too. People have got to be able to trust each other and rely on each other and be in it together. And we're building that culture that wasn't naturally existing here because of how stressful and difficult it was.
Now, when I talked with several former investigators, they mentioned that one of the big structural problems of merging that into that super circuit is they could start their day in South St. Louis City and then have to go to North County.
That's right.
So are you hoping that with enough staffing and with the hiring of these 2 people you mentioned, that you will just have investigators that only go in the city and only go in the county eventually?
That is completely possible with regard to what might happen. I'm going to I envision that is probably what's going to happen, but I want to talk with our local people to make sure that how they feel about how that should work, because sometimes that I won't cross a line situation creates some rigidity that's not healthy either. But one of the things that happened long before I got here is they closed the South County office. Well, as a guy who comes from northern Jefferson County, I know how hard it is to get from that place to the Page office at particular times of the day, with Highway 270 being what it is. And so I would like to explore reopening that. I would like to. I would like for us to look at those kind of efficiencies, because what you just described is something that is a real problem. And by the way, if you're an investigator and you've got that going on, you might have court in St. Louis City at Vandeventer, and then you might have to run out to Clayton, and you might have to be in 2 places at one time. And that just creates something that isn't sustainable if you understand that this is driven by the court schedule a lot.
So going back to the overall caseload, this is a clip from Department of Social Services Director Robert Nodell that he made in September of 2023.
It's no secret we've had a high degree of turnover and difficulty retaining workers, especially everywhere, but especially in the St. Louis market. And so we have beefed up our management consulting there to make sure that best practices are being used, that employees are being very well trained on best practices. And the good news there is we are now seeing week to week more investigations being closed than open. So that number of overdue reports is being reduced, and we envision hopefully within the next year that being eliminated. So we're very early in this process. This money was available to us beginning July the 1st in this fiscal year. So we're obviously very early in that process, but we are happy to see the beginning of trends. However, short staffing in that region remains a concern. We are executing weekly hiring events in the St. Louis area and having success doing that.
That is Missouri Department of Social Services Director Robert Nodell speaking at a September 2023 hearing of the House Children's and Families Committee. So you told me what the number of the backlog was. Are you still confident that you are going to be able to completely eliminate it by September 2024?
I believe so. I believe that we're going to be able to do that. And the reason is because we're going to be fully staffed. If we can keep the people that that have come on board, and we have retention, and we have people who are able to stay, I believe that number, I believe 1/3 of that number is going to be gone by April, based on the plan that Felicia McKenzie has in place and in action. And if it's not, it's going to be because something else intervened. But I believe that we will make serious progress over the summer, because in the summer months, the number of incoming cases just goes down, and we'll be able to work on that backlog again. And if we get to September and they're not all done, I think we do a full court press to clean it up. And a lot of these cases are very, very old. And the question that you've got to ask yourself is, do you re-traumatize a family with a case where you've determined that it's probably safe, and I'm just doing cleanup work? You go back out and show up again, because we're a traumatic event, man. When we show up at somebody's door.
Oh, absolutely. But I think that brings up the reason why I care about this so much. Yeah, there's going to be a large percentage of this backlog where it's unfounded accusations, or they can't prove anything. But even if there's a small percentage where abuse or neglect happened, and it's possible that a child is in danger long term. I understand your point about, like, if they're in imminent danger, it's dealt with right away. Like, that's why the backlog is so problematic.
Right.
But,
you don't know what's lurking there. And that is a genuine concern. I mean, we don't know what is in that backlog that might exist that we didn't see the first time we took a look at it. But I believe, and that's why you have the process of double checking on these things, right? But my firm hope is that we're going to confirm that those cases are all still okay, the way we thought they were okay, and we're going to be able to close them out and be completely done, and that we'll never get in this spot again. And my hope is that we will catch up and stay caught up. That's what I hope happens.
When I talked with you last time, you felt pretty confident that there was not a scenario where the backlog led to a child being hurt or killed. Are you still confident of that?
Yes, because they're the same cases that we talked about last time. Mm-hmm. We still haven't had that happen. We have, and listen, across the state, across Missouri, we have people making thousands of judgment calls all the time. And sometimes somebody's going to make a judgment call, and then something's going to happen after that, and that will be something that you can look at and say, gee, should that decision have been made? I don't know for sure that there are not giant lurking problems sitting in our backlog, the same way I don't know for sure that some of the judgment calls that are made in the field won't come back to have a bad outcome. But I believe that if there was anything that indicated to anyone that there was a likelihood of that kind of thing, those are not cases that would have wound up in the backlog. And so I'm hopeful. There could always be things that were unforeseeable or unforeseen that could happen, but I am hopeful that we are simply going to be able to get to those cases, confirm that everything's all right, and have a giant reset. In fact, we probably ought to have a party when we get there, and have a giant reset that says, okay, we now have 0 overdue backlogged reports. We're going to avoid ever getting in that spot again.
How does Children's Division prevent itself from ever getting into this situation again in St. Louis?
Well, I think that there are specific operational things that we can do, and when I say simple, I don't mean simple, easy. I mean straightforward. There are straightforward things that we can do to avoid that from happening, but then there are bigger, broader philosophical questions, and the operational questions are make sure we're fully staffed and make sure that that we are supporting the folks that are doing the work, supervising them well, not having supervisors carry cases, for example, and be able to keep up and clean up before that 45 days happen and create a culture where that is simply an outlier and that's not something that's allowed to happen. In the broader sense, the entirety of the agency, I believe, is moving toward a more proactive approach to this work, trying to get out in front of it. We have prevention workers coming on. That was part of the plan. That was in the legislature's budget, 100 new prevention workers across the state who will help us get out in front of these cases. We reduce caseloads and then create more prevention workers with the people who are freed up for that. So we are being more proactive, so that we're out in front of the situations before they turn into a hotline, and that ultimately we'll have fewer hotlines. I think we'll have a healthier child welfare system when we get there. I think we'll have safer and happier, healthier kids and families when we get there.
Darrell Missey is the director of Missouri's Children's Division. Director Missey, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Jason. It's been a pleasure to be with you today.
This episode was produced by Danny Wissentowski.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
St. Louis on the Air proudly supports local artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.